It is your girl, Charisse, and I am so excited for you to be joining me on another episode of In Your Element. Again, we are still rocking with the podcast format, so excited that you all have been able to shift with us into this new format, away from the studio, but I'm still bringing you that same energy. So excited for you all to come back. Keep the feedback coming. As I've mentioned many a time, I am really looking forward to featuring on this show folks who are what I like to call local celebrities who are using their platforms to empower, impact, and inspire others. And of course, I have got a new guest with me today, Miss Charisse Alouidor, who really, I think, uses her platform in that way. And so I'll tell you a little bit about Anna. She is a clinical coach, self-care consultant, therapist, published author, and spiritual mentor to many. Anna has nearly a decade of experience working with children and families in the Boston and Brockton area. Her experience ranges from case manager to homeless families to working with children with severe emotional disturbances as an in-home therapy clinician. She also has provided consulting services in college settings and served as a clinical coach to college students who are navigating college independently. Anna's personal battle and win against PTSD and depression has set a fire within her to bring awareness to mental health issues, primarily in the Black and Latino community. She shares her story of how God healed her, as well as practical tips in her first book, From Survival Mode to Greatness. Her main focus has been to provide culturally sensitive services rooted in authenticity, which has allowed her clients to not only feel comfortable, but truly valued and understood. She brings her boundless energy and passion to help others learn the necessary skills to not just survive, but thrive. Anna received her BA in psychology with a minor in Latino studies from Northeastern University in 2010. She then earned her master's in counseling with a concentration in Latino mental health from William James College in 2015. She shares her life with her husband, Eniolami, of 10 years, her two boys, Grant, Grayson, and her baby girl, Gianna. Woo! Yes! Welcome, Anna! Okay. Love it. Yes, thank you. And so I know I just went ahead and just, read all your accolades because hello. But tell the people a little bit about, where you kind of came from, because in so much of what we just heard, we got to know, some of the pieces, but, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you grew up, where you grew up, and kind of what brought you to who you are today.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much, Charisse, for having me on. I'm like, local celebrity, hello.
Hey.
That sounds fancy on that bio. I'm like, okay. That's me.
Yes.
All me, I know. Thanks again for having me. I'm so excited. So a little bit more about myself and my background. So I actually was born in Queens, New York, which a lot of people don't know. Ooh. I was born to Dominican parents. Shout out to my Platano people from Dominican Republic. Hello. And I was born to Dominican parents, but my biological father, he abandoned us when before I was even born. So I primarily say I was raised by a single parent, even though I had my grandmother that helped out. And I had my dad, who I call my dad, who stepped up to the plate to help raise me. But it was a complicated situation. So I just say I was raised by a single parent. And so I was in New York until I was about 7 years old. When my grandmother passed, we moved to Lawrence, Massachusetts. Living in Lawrence was very interesting. It's a unique place with so much potential, so much untapped potential, so much greatness, so much beautiful people, and rich culture. But it is one of the top 10 poorest cities in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. So we lack the resources to really be able to tap into our potential. So there's always the battle of the greatness and the not so great things. So I grew up, really just in my room. My mom wouldn't let me go out because I grew up in, gangs and selling drugs around my neighborhood. So my mom was like, you're not going out. You're going to be in your room reading books. So this quarantine life, this is what my life is.
You're used to this. You're like, oh, we back at home? We back at home.
Familiar. This is too familiar. So I'm like, this is what we do. I used to do this and we're doing it again. That's it. But somehow I found my way to the streets. I would kind of sneak out and I really wanted to fit in. You know, I was this beautiful, intelligent, you know, strong girl that was bound for success. I was going to go to college and I was going to do all that because my mom was determined to help me do that. But my environment really kept pulling me and I wanted to fit in. So I would hang out around my environments with people that were, you know, in gangs and selling drugs and, you know, drinking in corners and that kind of thing. And, you know, being in our schools, our academic settings were kind of similar, you know. I was excelling. I was a, you know, straight A student. I was kind of like what they consider a nerd until about 5th grade. Then I noticed those people weren't as popular. And I was like, So I started shifting into hanging out with people that were basically like those kids that were throwing chairs out the window.
Mm.
So, yeah, so I was like academically excelling still, but hanging out with people whose behavior wasn't, you know, the best. And, you know, it wasn't the best environment for learning. So I kind of struggled and I had a lot of tension for years between those spaces. Then when I went to high school, I went to a trade school. It's Greater Lawrence Technology School and Greater Lawrence Tech School, sorry. So I went there and it was a trade school. So I was like, you know, I'll come out with at least a trade or something, even if I don't make it to college. Somehow I knew I was still going to college. I didn't know how. And my first year there, my marketing teacher, Frankie Torres, I'll never forget, he looks at me, he's like, you're too smart to be in this school. I was like, huh? So he connected me with an organization that he didn't know I was already a part of, which was the Lawrence Boys and Girls Club. And they helped me get into Central Catholic High School through scholarships and things like that. But I had to repeat my freshman year because it's an academically rigorous school and I wouldn't have been ready. And even repeating freshman year, to be honest, I still wasn't ready because I was still working, you know, many hours to try to help my mom. I started working at the age of 12. Yeah. So trying to balance work and being in an institution like Central Catholic High School was extremely tough. Nevertheless, after graduation, I had been accepted to 8 different colleges. And I know.
Yes. Okay.
Every time I was like, me, really? There's just so many obstacles. And I was like, it felt almost impossible. And I was awarded a scholarship that would pay for 50% of any institution I wanted to go to in Massachusetts. And then the big nugget was when I received a full scholarship to my Reach school, which was Northeastern University.
Yes, we're going to clap that out. Clap that. Okay. Full scholarship.
Yes, I was like, praise God, because who knows? Even paying 50%, where was the other 50% going to go?
Right. I mean, how am I going to get half the diploma? Okay.
Give me the other half at another point.
Right. Put that somewhere else.
I know. Whatever. Just the Anna. I wouldn't get the last name.
We don't need the last name. That's fine.
That's me.
But you got that full scholarship. Huge.
Yeah, that was huge. And it wasn't just a scholarship, it was a full-blown program, which I needed, because you couldn't just throw me in an academic setting that was that rigorous, another step up, and not have the type of support that, you know, that program that I got accepted into was going to allow me just a different level that I really needed. But yeah, that's a little bit about growing up in Lawrence and how I made it to Northeastern.
My goodness. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because through a lot of what, you know, I was hearing, I'm like, you know, first you're starting in Queens, which, you know, in terms of, like you said, not a lot of people know that about you, that you came from Queens to Lawrence, which for those of you who are not from Massachusetts, you know, like, you know, Anna mentioned, it is definitely one of those places that, you know, unfortunately, those folks who are actually getting those scholarships to rigorous universities and schools, highly unlikely. A lot more of the, you know, more stigmas and stereotypes are happening versus the successes. And so excited that that was something that you were able to do. And so once you got to Northeastern, how was it that you decided to go down this path of social work?
Yeah, so I wanted to be an actress. I don't know why. I don't know why I was going to go to college and be an actress. But anyways, one of my brothers was like, you need a better plan. So I was like, fine, I'll be a doctor, whatever.
So, next step.
Right. I'm like, whatever, I'll be a doctor. So I went into Northeastern as, pre-med. I was a biomed major. And then Chem 101,
Mm.
yeah, I needed a moment of silence for that.
Pour out a little water for that. For that career that went down the drain.
Because child, that was, my roommate at the time and my best friend was pre-med as well, and we were in the same class and in the same scholarship program, and we had to withdraw.
Wow.
It was that bad. There was no extra help and office hours that could help us. Chem 101 was too much. That same semester, we both took psychology, and I was like, they were like, oh, you can take psychology and still go the pre-med route. And I was like, okay, because at that point I was like, okay, I'll be a pediatrician, and that would be helpful. I don't know, whatever's going to help me go the pre-med route.
Right.
So I made psychology my major because I was going to, still go the pre-med route. But everything changed after that. At some point, I thought I was going to be a teacher. So I applied for Teach for America and got denied several times. I was like, maybe that's not it. And then the year after I graduated, I was a wife. I was a mom within the first year of graduating. And then I stepped into a role as a case manager for homeless families. And I started seeing, oh, okay, the psychology piece. I started seeing these mental health issues and the stigma associated with mental health. And I was like, I definitely want to tap into that a lot more.
Wow. And so, I mean, that, again, your journey continues to amaze me, because I'm like, you came in, said, first of all, you came in as an actress, okay? You were like, hello, I'm going to this.
We are here.
Hello. And then we went to the pre-med, okay?
Yes.
We're going to the top of the top. She's like, I'm about to be somebody's doctor. And then psychology came through.
Right.
And so that hit you with that, new opportunity. And then all of a sudden graduated, and here you are taking on a brand new role as a wife and a mother.
Right.
And now you're into this, going into the homes of families and going down a whole new career path. So, I mean, tell me, what was that like to be experiencing all three of those new roles at once? I mean, because that must not have been easy either.
Oh, not at all. So when I first graduated, there was a lot of pressure because I was a part of the first class of this program. So that came with a lot of pressure. And I remember going back a year later because I graduated a year earlier than my peers. And so when I went back and joined my class, we had this huge celebration. LL Cool J was there. It was like our big celebration. And I was like, this is awesome. And people kept asking me, so what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm a stay-at-home mom for now. And you don't go, there's this stigma associated with that as well, that you don't go to college or, Northeastern University, full scholarship program to then be a stay-at-home mom. Right. So that first year was extremely difficult. I struggled with postpartum depression. I actually struggled with PTSD and depression for several years before that, undiagnosed. So I wasn't aware. And then my symptoms were exacerbated by having a child. Which is typical. It happens to a lot of people, but we're not aware. So then I had postpartum depression. So now I'm struggling within these roles. And I'm really young. I'm like in my early 20s. The pressure of feeling like I should be doing more. So it was extremely difficult. But during that season, God really opened up my eyes to, unlocking that potential within me. He gave me a vision for what wellness would look like, mental and emotional wellness. And I can kind of see it now, but I couldn't see it, 10, 12 years ago. So I struggled with knowing that there was more that I wanted to do, that I was called for. But here I was struggling with this undiagnosed mental health issue, and then going into these homes where I know there was more for them as well and more that I could do. So it was like this beautiful, ugly mess, right? Because I was struggling, but I could see the potential and the greatness in not only myself, but really in the people that I was working with.
I love the way you describe that, like this beautiful mess.
Yeah,
Because I think that is probably how a lot of people are feeling right now, even because of
yeah,
course we are in this very unique space, this very unique time in history dealing with this COVID-19. And for so many people, this has become truly a beautiful mess because on one hand, you have, all of these people who are either struggling with these different symptoms. We're trying to figure out what is this virus? How does it work? How can we,
mhm,
try to find a cure and find, a vaccine that will help people. And then at the same time, people are also having so much more time on their hands. They're home. They get to, be able to figure out, maybe pursue those things that they've been wanting to do, or, look into those passions and do those things. And so it's, that part is beautiful. And then you also have people who are at home where home is not a happy place. And that isn't a refuge. And that isn't something that is, bringing them joy or something. So this beautiful mess is happening kind of where we are right now. I'm curious, obviously someone, with your background, I'm sure you've encountered a lot of folks who have been struggling with different things in that way, but I'm curious what kind of, either resources or what would you recommend for someone who is dealing with those type of mental health challenges during this time?
yeah, definitely. I think just in general for everyone, I think just allowing the space for us to feel the feels, you know, I think that this is completely different for absolutely everyone, from professionals to just everyone, even children, everybody is being impacted by this. So this is different. And I think we want to set ourselves up as experts but nobody's lived through something like this, so it's different for everyone, and your emotions are going to be different every single day. Some days you're like, I feel good, I feel empowered, I'm going to do my Zoom meetings and do all these things, but then there's other days where you'll feel low energy and you'll feel blah, and you'll miss people, interactions with people, and all these different things. So allowing yourself to feel the feels, and being okay with that, and having a plan to sort of reset. What are some positive things that you can be viewing? We have to really limit. I know it's hard to be informed is one thing, but to constantly be consuming the media and to constantly have it on, you're subconsciously taking that in, and your body is going to react to that because it's constant, negative news. Unfortunately, there are people that have had COVID-19 that survived, but they're not sharing those stories as much. So,
Mhm.
limiting the social media even, or the reports, the negative reports, and kind of consuming more positive things. I think also changing our clothes and being more, that's a struggle for some of us.
Mhm.
you know Something happens, or a shift will happen when when I put on makeup today and did my hair, I was like, oh, I feel good. There's literally a shift that happens, that instead of just wearing my lounge clothes, because lounge is like, we're hanging out, we're lounging, but if you do that every single day, something happens where your body is literally like just going in.
Mhm.
So just shifting and doing that, working out, even if it's 10-15 minutes, getting your body active. I think for people that have mental illness, continuing treatment. If your therapist is willing to do telehealth, still continue those treatments. I have a few places, I have about 7 places that are doing remote therapy. So Talkspace, I'm going to name them and you guys can kind of research a little bit more about it, but it gives flexibility for people to be able to conduct therapy online. And some of them are free, some of them are lower cost. So Talkspace, Open Path, BetterHelp. There's one specifically for postpartum depression treatment online. It's called Amwell's. Then there's Center for Interactive Mental Health Services. This is a free service. It's not talk therapy, and it's sort of this 8-week course, this interactive course for depression. So it's not necessarily therapy, but it can be helpful to help manage the symptoms of depression. Then there's 7 Cups. 7 Cups is not mental health services. It's just volunteers who are really just listeners. So if you need somebody to talk to, 7 Cups. Then there's Health Sapiens. Health Sapiens is affordable online therapy option. It's a subscription based, so it's a little bit more expensive. So it's $150 a month. So there are a few services out there continue your therapy services as well as your psychiatrist, if you can see them, telehealth, as well as your medication, because that's going to be huge. I think for people that have children, it's a whole different level because you have to take care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit, but you also have to take care of them. And if you notice any change in behaviors in terms of extra whining, tantrums, things that you weren't seeing before, that's their way of saying they're having a hard time. And instead of, trying not to snap and yell, it's really being there for them and kind of, children's way of speaking is play. So if they say, hey, mom, dad, I want to play, that's kind of code for I want to spend time with you, or I need your attention. I'm lacking something and I need you. And even though it's hard, because I know as a mom, I'm like, once you say play to me, even though I'm this very like joyous and I seem like I'm fun, the idea of play for me is like, because I feel like I have so much stuff to do. Like I don't have time to play. Right. So in my head, I automatically have to pause and I have to be like, okay, Anna, that means they need your attention. They want to spend time with you. You need to pause. So just engaging in more play and keeping a schedule and a routine is so important, but also knowing the balance that sometimes, they'll need a half day or no school from this homeschooling life that's new, not only to you, but also to them. So finding that balance between a lot of quality time and spending, including spending time in these routines and schedules. And I know that technologies are a lifesaver right now, both for adults and children, but trying to limit that. And if they can go outdoors, I know that's not the case in a lot of places where you can go like outside to the yard, but if they can get some fresh air and just engage in play outside of technology, that would be great. And yeah, just be patient with yourself. It's really the time to practice self-compassion because we're not pros, we're not experts at this, and every day is going to look different.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you kind of breaking that down and for sharing those resources. I'll definitely make sure that to include those as well in the show notes. So check those for the links as well. But I love that you were able to kind of break down that idea of play. I mean, I don't have any children, but even from, playing around with, my husband's nieces have come over and, in terms of just seeing what does it look like for everyone to be experiencing this new normal, and trying to figure out how to really be like come into yourself while still figuring out what is going on. And I know that for some people it hasn't been that difficult just yet. And I think, luckily, we've just been kind of a month into this, right? It's now starting to set in for some people. And so one of the things that I did want to kind of double back to was the fact that you are focused, you want to focus in on the, communities of color. Yes. And working with, Black and Latino communities. And this is a really unique space because I feel like that is also a very taboo conversation to be talking about mental health and how to kind of look at that. And you had shared, transparently about the fact that you had kind of had your own, mental health that you had gone undiagnosed. And so I'm curious, how did you kind of come to find out that it was something that was undiagnosed? Because I'm curious, if that could be something, maybe you share a little bit about how you learned about that, so that if someone is, at home right now, kind of going through similar things, like how can they recognize their symptoms, or, what are some of the ways in which that manifested for you?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't know, of course, that I had any mental health issues until I was training to be a therapist and I was in graduate school. I went to therapy to sort of be in that seat so that I can really understand where my clients would be coming from. And while I was there, some of these questions, introspective questions that they were asking, led me to really reflect on my childhood and my teenage years. And I remember some of the things that I experienced were a lot of anger outbursts. So I was this, happy-go-lucky kid in the streets, but when I was home, that's really when it would just be awful. I remember slamming things around my room, and I was really, disrespectful towards my mother, and I was slamming doors, and like I remember I had a headboard made out of it was a mirror, and I just slammed it. Like I was so just angry. I had so much anger inside of me. And so I had a lot of anger outbursts. I also struggled with suicidal thoughts. I had thoughts of feeling worthless, feeling useless, and feeling like life would be better without me. So there was actually 2 occasions where I attempted suicide. And I did open up when I was a teenager. One was at my first high school. And I remember telling someone my health, I think, no, I told someone, one of my peers, and one of my peers told our health teacher. But somehow I got out of it because I felt, a lot of shame. And then I told my mom, and my mom, her sweet soul, the second time I attempted at my second high school, her friend came to visit me and said, "Oh, are you feeling okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, she just took the wrong pills." So I heard the shame in her voice, and I kind of just, I didn't say anything. But I had a lot of bouts of just crying and hopelessness, and, little things would trigger me. And just, I remember feeling like if somebody stole from me, I would take it really personal, and I would just start crying and for no reason. And I would overeat. I would consume a lot of food because it would pacify sort of this void that I was feeling. Um, and yeah, I had a lot of sleepless nights, so insomnia, and trying to think of some of the other things I experienced. But that was like the bulk of it. It was like insomnia, lost hope, and many times I just didn't want to engage in the activities that I once enjoyed. And I didn't realize all this until later on while I was in therapy, that I was like, oh, okay, some of these things that I was feeling and dealing with now was because of my history.
Wow. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing that so transparently and honestly. And I think for a lot of folks, there are times where, especially because of our community, like you kind of alluded to it with your mom, that kind of shame and that feeling of guilt about, what is this saying about me? What am I doing wrong? What is wrong with me? Versus really being open about having the conversation of, let's talk about this, not shunning this as something that should not be discussed. Because I think more and more, luckily, we're getting into a space where I think it's becoming a little bit more acceptable to speak about, or even just to recognize that
Yeah.
mental health is something that is as important as your physical health, as your emotional health. And so I think just wanted to make sure that folks could start to hear a little bit more about it, because I don't think it's talked about enough,
Yeah.
to a place that it has become normalized,
Right.
or acceptable. And so if you are somebody who's listening and that is something that any of the things that Anna mentioned, or other things that maybe Anna didn't mention, but you kind of have an inkling, you're starting to feel that, definitely encourage you to take advantage of a lot of the resources that Anna shared, because this is the time, especially where it can get difficult, and we want to make sure that you are taking care of you, because again, as I've said before, like you can't pour from an empty cup, and we need to make sure that you are at your best, and taking care of you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to add, Charisse, the biggest tell that we always say is that any thoughts or emotions that are taking over your daily life that don't allow you to function in those different roles the same way that you once did is like a huge tell. You know what I mean? Like for a lot of people, if they're overly exhausted to the point where they're not getting up and not taking showers and things of that nature, it's a huge tell. So if anything is mentally and emotionally just taken over to the point where you can't function on your day to day, is a huge tell that maybe it's time to reach out and get some help.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So utilize the resources. There are tons of different ways in which you can try to contact folks. And even just, if there is someone that you trust that you can talk to, I would say even start there, right? Just start to have the conversation with someone, pick up the phone. And, this is also a time for those of, those folks who maybe not suffering from any of those kind of challenges at this time. I would say, when you ask somebody how they're doing, genuinely wait to listen for that answer. I think there's so much that can be taken away when somebody says, "How are you really?" And, how are you doing? And actually waiting to hear that answer, because I've noticed, I've started to track a little bit. And some of my conversations with folks, like, I ask how people are, everyone's so quick to be like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm great, blah, blah, blah. It's the quick automatic response. But there are a lot of folks who are not necessarily doing good. That answer, good. And if you even just continue to follow up, like, oh, great. Well, what's so good? Like, what has you feeling good? What has you feeling great? Because I think that gives people the space to continue the conversation if they feel as though there might be a hesitancy. So definitely want to open that up as well for folks. So, well, one of the things that I know is that in this last year, your life has drastically changed. And that's another thing that I want to also give encouragement to people, that, a year can really change things.
Yeah.
We are already seeing how 2019 to 2020 has become something different. But for you, Anna, 2019 to 2020 has also, brought with it, some different challenges and also some new opportunities. And so I'm excited for you to share a little bit about what has been happening for you over this last year and change.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't see it when we're in it, that a year can be completely different. But in the past year, so a year ago, I was living in Stoughton, Massachusetts. I only had 2 children. I was working consulting jobs and coaching in college settings. We were doing well. And then God told us to move to Atlanta, Georgia. So we just dropped everything, and we packed up all our stuff. And I was pregnant at that time too. And yeah, so we moved in July of 2019 to Atlanta, Georgia, with just a word from God. And during that time, I had my daughter in September. Prior to that, I published my first book. How can I skip over to that?
Hello. Oh my
I just published a book, whatever.
The book. Anyway, yeah, I was pregnant, published a book, I'm saying, working, whatever. Yeah.
It's just, just another day. Yeah, so I published my first book, From Survival Mode to Greatness, in which I share my story and practical tips, of the things that I struggled with and dealt with. I really just want to bring awareness to mental health in general. So I published that book, and then I had my daughter in September. And then recently I also launched the Community Well podcast, which is a safe space for people to be vulnerable and transparent, for us to share our struggles of emotional and mental health challenges and successes, so that others can kind of just feed off of that and know that they're not alone, and we can kind of nurture each other to be everything that God has predestined for us to be.
Wow, that is incredible. Again, I'm just saying, it's hilarious to me when you're just like, yeah, I just moved from one state, basically, down the whole East Coast, and started a whole new life, had a book, had a baby, podcast, whatever. So that's incredible. I mean, and so what do you, I don't know, in terms of all of those different things, right? Like, that is a lot of pieces to be able to be dealing with. And so how did you kind of get to the place where it was like, oh, wow, I just started this new, venture, and it's not even a big deal. Like, how do you kind of stay organized? How do you compartmentalize all of that to do it well?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad it appears that way. Because sometimes, to be honest, the back behind the scenes, things that people don't see, is sort of that insecurity and that doubt. I had a lot of things established in Massachusetts. I had everything from my village to my job in consulting and all these different things, and even managing my family. My boys are 9 and 7. They are, we've raised them to be self-sufficient. They even do their own laundry. They, they can cook their own breakfast supervised. Like, I was at that point, and now here we are, transitioning into having a whole baby that relies on you, to launching this new thing, and really just putting yourself out there again in a whole new way. So, transitioning here with no one at all, was difficult. Thank God for technology. I'm able to stay connected to all my family, and talk to them on a constant basis, texting and calling. And then having a baby, I kind of prepared ahead of time. I had a postpartum doula because I knew I struggled with postpartum depression with my first son. My second son, I didn't, but I always had like a plan in place. So I hired a postpartum doula, to be able to help me out. After my family came to visit and left, I would have support. So I kind of planned ahead for that. And then just, I didn't have a plan really. People kept asking me, what are you going to do, like, career wise? And even my husband. And I was like, I don't know. And I'm really type A. I have a plan for everything, 5-year, 10-year, you name it. I have a plan. And I didn't. And I allowed myself the space that I wasn't thinking about losing weight. I wasn't thinking about a career. I wasn't thinking about anything except for being mentally and emotionally okay with the transition. Taking care of my family as they transitioned, because the boys were in a new school. My husband he's a teacher, so he's in a new school as well. We're in a whole different state, a whole new community. So I really had no plans, and really allowing God to lead me. I eventually started thinking about launching my website, and then he was like, turn left, I need you to do this first. And I was like, a podcast? Really? Okay. So just really being obedient to God, because sometimes I don't know what I'm doing.
There you go. Yes, no, that's amazing. And I think that in itself, as far as, your, part of your focus, like you said, is like, I needed to make sure that I was emotionally and mentally well before trying to take on something new, because I think that really helps you to then allow yourself to be guided in the way that allows for that next step to come naturally and to come seamlessly. So, kudos to you. You are definitely one of those super women, hence why you one of those celebrities, girl, because you are the thing. Okay. And so before we jump into our on the spot with Reese, I want to have you just tell the people just one thing that you found that really helped you to get in your element and figure out what was going to help Anna be successful.
Yeah, so definitely Jesus, therapy, and doing the work. So my relationship with God is at the forefront. He is my strength when I am weak. I don't know what I'm doing if he's not guiding me. And I really don't want to live this life just all over the place. I really want to be led by him. So my relationship with God is the foundation. Going to therapy and having that space to be well, mentally and emotionally, before I pour out to anybody else. I need to make sure that I'm filling my own cup first. And doing that work, I mean the introspective work, to take time to journal every single day, because sometimes we can just go ahead of ourselves or just be on this treadmill going, and we don't know where or why or what we're doing. So when you really sit still and you do the intentional work of figuring out, what am I doing and why am I doing it? You know what I mean? Especially like during this time, I noticed that transitions are interesting for me. I don't seamlessly go from one transition to the other. It takes me a little bit of time. And so, taking the time of why are transitions hard for you, Anna, and figuring out, oh, okay, this is why. And so then I can implement that again, like in a different season, because transitions are guaranteed,
Facts. Woo! Amazing, amazing, amazing. All right. So, we are going to jump right into some rapid fire questions, and we'll see what your answers are for folks to get to know you even better. So, dogs or cats?
Dogs, but it depends.
Depends. What does it depend on?
I guess the people that have the dogs. I don't really like dogs.
Okay.
I have friends that have dogs, and I like their dogs.
There you go. So the ones that are well-behaved, dogs, we can talk.
I like you.
I like it. And so because you have kids, right? If you have to choose between one series to watch for the rest of your life, okay, is it Paw Patrol or Peppa Pig?
Paw Patrol all the way.
Paw Patrol. Okay, Paw Patrol. Going back to the dogs. What's your favorite color?
It is black for clothes, but red in general.
Okay. Red in general. I like it. Yeah, black is definitely, I feel you on the clothing. You know what I'm saying? You got, yes.
And it's slimming, girl.
So as an author and podcaster, which do you prefer?
I like books. I'm old school. I love to like highlight and underline and make notes.
Yeah. What's the funniest thing you've seen online this week?
Oh my God. I can't pinpoint one, but there's this Dominican guy that does videos, and he's like just speaking in our accent when it's like Spanglish. He's like, "Que I don't know. What you want?" For some reason, I see these videos with this guy, and I'm rolling.
Right? Humor is important during these times.
Oh, yes.
Woo. So you are married. And so I'm curious, who often gets the last word in your house?
It depends on what it is, on the subject.
That's right. That's right. You know what? We're going to hold that down. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
you, girl. Have that last word.
It's me.
Yes. All right. What is your go-to cheat meal?
Oh my God. Dominican food. Anything Dominican, I am for. Mostly we have like this rice. It's called moro con guandule. It's rice with pigeon peas, sweet plantains, and if I can have any meat. Usually this is only like restaurants or like Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is pernil, is like roasted pork.
Okay. All right. You just got me hungry, girl. I'm ready to eat something. Hello, please. All right. All right. Favorite female artist of all time?
Selena.
Oh, Selena. Yes. I'm gonna watch that movie on repeat, girl.
On repeat. I might watch it after this.
Hello, I'm just saying, you put that thing on, it comes on TV, I'm just there, like mesmerized. Just come on.
All the words.
Come through. All right. What is one thing you plan to do when this quarantine is over?
We are going to a restaurant to have a meal cooked by somebody else, child.
Yes.
Be around people and plan a vacation.
Hello. Just get out. Somebody cook for me. Please cook for me. I feel that. I've definitely, this has been the most I've been cooking, and Lord only knows. So,
girl, my child was asking, like, what are we having for lunch? And I'm like, didn't you eat yesterday?
Right. You're still hungry? Dang, let me eat something. Okay.
Right. I'm like, you gonna eat again, child? Like, I don't know.
Okay, fine, I guess. I'll make you something to eat. Fine.
Right.
Fine.
Yes, I gotta feed you.
Okay, last question.
Yes.
What part of the human race is your favorite?
I think just the love. When I see love and people taking care of each other and that selfless, acts of giving, that just, it just warms my heart. Like, people right now stepping up to the plate and using their gifts to help other people and, give back. I'm just like, yes, humans, yes.
Yes. No, that is beautiful. Giving back is so important. And speaking of, I have really appreciated the fact that you were blessing me with being on my show. So thank you so much for joining, and tell folks, how can they learn more about you, about your podcast, your book? Where can they stay in touch with Anna?
Yeah, definitely. So the easiest way is on Instagram, Anna Tibisay Ayobiojo. So the Tibisay part is Tib as in boy, Isay. Just one word, no hyphens, nothing like that. Anna Tibisay Ayobiojo. My link tree's on there. You can find my book, you can find my podcast, and upcoming stuff that I have up my sleeve.
Woo, that's right. I know she got a lot going on. She's pulling it out from here and there. Like,
we gotta keep up. Who knows?
Out there. Love it. Awesome. Well, again, I've so appreciated having the opportunity to chat with you. And for those of you, again, I appreciate all of my listeners. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of In Your Element. If you have ideas or feedback that you want to share, please be sure to email me at IYE with Reese, RISSE @gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe. Also check out the link tree. And if you have, again, anyone that you think would be a great person to have on the show, let me know. Message me. Would love to have them. And until next time, we'll